And welcome back to Hannity. So Donald Trump is moving closer to selecting his running mate. Earlier today, the presumptive Republican nominee told the Associated Press that he has now narrowed his VP list to 5 or 6 people. Now, Trump's campaign manager, Lewandowski, will be in charge of that vetting process. He joins us now in studio. How are you, sir?
Hey, it's great to be here, Sean.
No, not a lot of responsibility there, right?
Well, I had nothing else to do. No, honestly, I'm part of a team. And everything we do at that campaign is a team. And at the end of the day, we're going to present Mr. Trump some recommendations, and he will make the decision of who he thinks should be his running mate. And we'll be a partner in the government to make sure that he can accomplish his legislative agenda. So I'm humbled to be part of that team, but my job is to make sure this team recommends somebody good to Mr. Trump.
There's the obvious criteria. You look geographically. You look Florida, you look Ohio. You look, a lot of people say you balance a ticket. Gender-wise, do you put a woman on the ticket? All those things in consideration, they must be.
I think the most important thing is, God forbid anything were to happen to Mr. Trump as the president, you want someone who can take over the government the very next day and make sure that their agenda, Mr. Trump's agenda, continues to move forward. Now, nobody would ever want that. But more importantly, you need someone who understands the legislative process intimately, can make sure that in the first 100 days, which are so critical, we get done the agenda which Mr. Trump is putting forward, which is cutting taxes, reducing our deficit, renegotiating our trade deals. And so in that sense, you need someone who understands and has experience in the legislative process to get that accomplished.
You are not giving us one itty-bitty clue at all, no matter how hard I try, am I? Are you?
I think the most important thing is, look, it's not about gender, it's not about geographic representation, it's who best is a partner to bring our country back from where it is, because we have to make sure that we don't allow another 4 or 8 years of a Democrat in the White House who's taking our country in the exact opposite direction. So it's more important about making sure we have the right person on the ticket to make sure Mr. Trump gets his agenda
Is it really
done.
down to 5 or 6?
I think it's a small group of people, and, you know, we've been looking at this for some time now, and at the end of the day, we're going to submit a list of people to Mr. Trump for his consideration, and he's going to have to make sure that that person he can work with, because this is truly a partnership moving forward, and that person will be on the ticket and help us be successful in November, and that's our goal.
All right, let's talk a little bit about everything else that's going on with the campaign. What was your reaction to Paul Ryan's comments, and what do you think is going to happen on Thursday? What do you expect?
You know, I think Mr. Trump and Paul Ryan have a lot in common, and I think those things that they have in common are looking at reducing the budget deficit, you know, making sure we have a balanced budget for the first time since Speaker Gingrich was the Speaker, making sure that we're providing middle-class tax cuts. You know, these are the important things that everyone can agree on in the Republican Party. Smaller government, getting rid of the overzealous government agencies that are burdening our small businesses with their egregious regulations. I think those things are all in line with the Republican values in the Republican Party. I think those things everyone can agree on. How we get there?
Yeah,
I'm not sure, but we'll find out.
It seemed to me Paul Ryan doesn't do a lot of interviews, and he came out, did an interview, knew that question was going to be asked, and it seemed like he wanted to, in a way, I don't know if sabotage is too strong a word, fire a shot across the bow maybe to Donald Trump. I didn't think it was particularly helpful.
Well, Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. He's a presumptive nominee. He's going to be the Republican nominee, and he will become the head of the party for the Republicans as the Republican presidential candidate going into November. And it's important to understand that he will be helping to set the agenda, not just during the November elections, but as you move forward and he becomes the president-elect and then ultimately the president. It's going to be his agenda that the country's going to be following.
You got a lot on your plate. I mean, you've got to not only pick a cabinet potentially and build a government potentially. How many thousands of jobs would be available for people? But you got a convention first. You certainly have a party platform that is, I guess, people are going to have their views on it. How do you feel that process goes?
Look, we've got a great team. We've got Paul Manafort on board. We've got Rick Wiley. We've got Ken McKay. We're continuing to build out. These guys are pros.
By the way, for a while, it was you and Hope.
It was a small team.
There wasn't a lot of people there for a while.
It was small, but we were efficient. Right? We spent less money and had the best results. Mr. Trump got 11 million votes so far, more than anybody else in the history of the Republican Party in the nomination process. He's got, obviously, has more delegates than anybody has. He's going to be the Republican nominee, but you got to grow. You know, we're going to go up against a Clinton potential, the potential Clinton machine that has thousands of people already on board. And, they have built-in advantages. I think the difference with Donald Trump as a candidate is that he's going to expand the map. You saw the polls come out today, the Quinnipiac polls. He's ahead in the state of Ohio. He's dead even in the state of Pennsylvania. He's dead even in the state of Florida. When you start putting states like that in play, and then you've got Michigan and New York and potentially Massachusetts and Indiana and places where Republicans haven't done historically as well as they could have, the map expands. We were in Oregon and Washington State this weekend. At one rally in Washington State, he had 22,000 people come out. Clearly not the bastion of conservatism that many other states could be. But that's because his message is so important, and people turn out in record numbers. We've seen that with the massive turnouts on primary days across the country because they want to support Donald Trump, and we think we're going to see that same thing happen on
We had
election
Rick
day.
Perry on the program last night. He had strong words during the campaign and when he got out for Mr. Trump, but he said it's a no-brainer. He's supporting him. You have people like Perry, John Kasich, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Scott Walker, just to name a few, Bobby Jindal, Rick Scott of Florida. You have this team of governors that governed conservatively, took high deficits, turned them into surpluses, high unemployment rates, brought hundreds of thousands of jobs to their states. Do you see maybe announcing a team of rivals as a possibility at some point? In other words, making announcements. This is my Secretary of State, my Secretary of Defense, my Health and Human Services Secretary Ben Carson.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but what I do think you have is you have some great governors out there who understand what it's like to be the CEO of their state and making tough decisions, and sometimes with Republican legislatures and sometimes with Democrat legislatures. But that's the model that we need to follow. You know, you look at what Rick Scott's been able to do in Florida, right? He's done a very, very good job down there. You look at what Governor Jindal's done in Louisiana. And you also look at some of these states that have balanced budget requirements. There's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that we're not passing on debt to our children and our grandchildren moving forward, because it's unfair to them, and it's our responsibility to make sure that not only are we balancing the budget, but we're reducing our deficit, and it's a priority for this campaign.
You know, one of the things, I look at two areas where conservatism on a federal level was most successful during the Reagan years and when Newt Gingrich put out a contract. If you look at all the exit polls, you have anywhere between 60 and 70% of Republicans in this primary season saying that they feel betrayed by Washington Republicans. Is it time maybe to put pen to paper and also create an opportunity to run a national campaign where Senate candidates and House candidates can run on a set of principles? Elect us, we'll do these 10 things to make America great, if you want to use Trump's slogan. Would that be a good idea?
Look, it's a good idea, but what you have to understand is Washington has been fundamentally broken for almost 30 years now.
That's why I want to lock them into a promise.
Well, the American people are making less money today than they were 20 years ago in real dollars.
Yeah.
And the reason Donald Trump has had such success is because the blue-collar people who are making less money, whose jobs have been shipped overseas, they want to change. They're tired of politics as usual. People have had the opportunity to go to Washington for year after year after year, and nothing changes. People are fed up with it. Donald Trump has the ability to go in there and fundamentally change the system, to understand what it's like to truly govern with a mandate, if he's given that privilege, to go in and say, just because it's always been done this way, we're not going to do it anymore. And what we've seen in this campaign is Donald Trump has raised issues where in the primary his opponents have said, you can't do that. You can't build a wall. You can't get Mexico to pay for it. 3 weeks later, they're all on the same side as, we better build a wall and we better get Mexico to pay for it. We can't renegotiate bad trade deals. That's never been done before.
But I thought when Donald Trump said, and he goes, I'm going to announce 12 people, 14 people, that will be my pool of candidates for the Supreme Court to show conservatives how serious he is about his judicial philosophy. Wouldn't it also give people a lot of comfort knowing in 100 days we're going to build the wall, we're going to change trade deals, get rid of executive orders, repeal Obamacare, put forth a balanced budget, eliminate Common Core, let the states decide, move towards energy independence? Really solid positions and a promise.
Well, and look, he's laid out most of those on the campaign trail. He talks about them all the time, and he has done, more campaign events than anyone. He's done more media opportunities than anyone, I think, and he's laid out some people who he would consider to be appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Dianne Sykes, Pryor from Alabama. These are conservative jurists who are not looking to legislate from the bench. These are just a small sampling of the many, and we said we'd release more. But the difference is, when this race comes down to it, you have a presidential candidate who could have the potential of appointing 4 or potentially 5 Supreme Court justices over a 4 or 8 year period to fundamentally change the way America functions, to legislate from that bench. And if you want to have Hillary Clinton, who's going to appoint a justice who is anti-Second Amendment, that will change the fundamental way that we live every day, then that's something that we don't agree with. And the people that Donald Trump has recommended are strict constitutionalists and understand that it's not the job of a judge to legislate from the bench. That's not what they're designed to do. You know, you let Congress make the laws. You work with the Congress as the president to make sure that those laws are accurate and to the best of our ability. But you don't turn it over to the federal judges to make those laws. And so that's the big difference.
Corey, good to see you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm glad to see you got a bigger team now. Good. All right, thank you. And coming up, new polls out of 3 key swing states show that Donald Trump is neck and neck with Hillary Clinton. Bill Hemmer standing by tonight at the big board. He'll explain how this is going to impact the electoral map come November. Plus, more reaction to tonight's primary results out of West Virginia and Nebraska as we continue tonight on Hannity.